Item number 5, items referred to committee. Clerk, should you read the item at this point?
Resolution number 2015-0274, a resolution making an award on requisition number 35765 to Turner Ozan, a joint venture for design builder services for the Huntington Park Garage Rehabilitation Project, authorizing the county executive to negotiate, enter into, and execute an initial contract with Turner Ozan, a joint venture, in the amount not to exceed to be determined for the period to be determined, and to execute all other documents consistent with said award and this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
All right, Mr. Dever.
Good afternoon, members of council. I'm here today to do a presentation on the Huntington Park Garage project that's coming forward. I have a few of my colleagues with me in the back here, Mike Chambers and Nicole English from our department, that are going to assist in the presentation. I know you've already had a busy afternoon, so I'll try and condense to the main points to get to for the project itself. What I handed out to you already is a PowerPoint presentation. First thing I want to go over basically what the issues are with the garage currently. Second is what the project delivery method we're going to be utilizing. And then the third piece is the parking reallocation, which is going to be a conversation I know we all want to have. And then the fourth piece is the rates for the garage itself. On the first page basically is the scope of work for the project. There's structural repairs that need to be done. On page 2 there, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, system upgrades for the garage. On page 3, we're talking about architectural and aesthetic and security enhancements to the garage. Accessibility improvements over the years, yet many barriers remain. Upgrades will be including some signage, access to the elevators. The page 5 there, these are just some photos basically we took of some of the issues that are in the garage at this time. From structural component distress on page 5, page 6, and I know many of you, when the offices were over at both the former administration building and then at 323 Lakeside, I believe the address was, you saw many of the issues. Structural component distress, once again, page 7, page 8, page 9. On page 9 there also, to the right, emergency shoring had to be provided to this girder in December of 2014. It actually closed. We had to close the garage down because there was structural issues. We worked on this over the weekend. It started on the holiday, Christmas, right around Christmas, and we had the garage back open by the early part of 15. But these are some of the problems that are associated with the facility. HVAC systems, exhaust for the building. Page 11, ductwork that's missing. Heaters within the office and also in the elevator banks. Electrical conduit, corroded, that's on page 12. Page 13. Inadequate lighting in the stairwells. Original roof drains, plumbing systems on page 14. How the water is being controlled on the facility itself on page 15 there. Extensive corrosion on the fire protection system. Page 16, page 17, also in relation to the fire protection system. Page 18, architectural conditions, the ticket booths, corrosion around doors. Accessibility, poor visibility getting into the facility for anyone that's ADA needs. Exit signs not illuminated. So that takes us to the end of page 21. So I came before this council back a while ago in regards to hiring a consultant to provide engineering services to design the improvements to the garage. We put out an RFP, request for bids, back in September 18th of 2015, and they were due just before Halloween. And that was the traditional delivery method for this construction project, which was we were designing it, we were bidding it, and then we were going to build it. Those estimates came back on the 27th, and the engineer's estimate for the project was at $16 million, $16.6 million was our engineer's estimate for the project. The lowest bid that came in was at $20 million. It was almost 25% higher than the estimate. And some of the reasons for that being the cost of that rising was there was acceleration factors because we needed to move quickly on the project. And we were looking to accelerate the project, somewhat tied into the hotel and our commitment to the hotel and the convention center, which is ultimately 410 spots for the hotel and 500 for the convention center. Also, the phasing of the project, we have committed that we will have the hotel or the garage open for business during the convention that'll be here in town. Obviously, the first week of July, I believe, is our interim completion date. So when the bids came in 25% higher, we had to go back to the drawing board and go back quickly. We decided to go look at a delivery method, a project delivery method, which was design build. If we went with the design build process, it helped with scheduling, and we were able to use the similar bid documents. So we ended up putting an RFP out for design build services, and we released that on November 10th. So we turned this around from when the bids came in on the 27th of October, and we turned around and put it back on the street on November 10th. They were due on November 30th. 2 proposals were submitted. The selection team reviewed both the proposals, one from Turner Ozane, the second from Mid-American Construction. Turner Ozane was selected by our selection committee. Our initial contract was approved for $500,000 by the Board of Control on December 7th. So what's actually before the council today is going to be a substitution to that contract that was approved on December 7th. In order to start design work with an estimated cost of $500,000 was established at the initial contract at that Board of Control meeting. This gave the contractor, who's with us here also today, is Turner Ozane, an opportunity to develop their budget, schedule, and put together preliminary construction services, the releasement of bids for bid packages for the concrete restoration work for the project, for the HVAC system, for the systems in the garage itself, from plumbing to electrical. We presented at the BOC and was made, when we presented this at the Board of Control, it was made clear that this was the initial contract just to get Turner Ozane under contract so we can keep the project moving forward as quickly as possible. We said we'd be coming back to you today, and this is going to be an amendment today to get us an initial contract amount in place before we go to the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price for the project, which we expect that to come before you. I believe it's the first week of March. We hope to have the GMP. The amendment that's going to be before you today is for an increase for $4 million to bring the total to $4.5 million. This covers design, pre-construction cost, and initial construction packages. The GMP, like I said, will come back to you in early March. What we need to do, Turner Ozane is going to sell these packages, and they need to get under some preliminary construction now. And part of that preliminary construction is We're looking to start work on next week on January 12th, after council does formal approval of this, to get the project underway to start for demolition of certain areas of the garage. I'm sorry, I'm skipping around here a little bit. The financing model for the project includes debt payment for this project in addition to reserve accounts for funding operations, routine maintenance, and capital projects into the future. I'm going to get back into the presentation again on page 22 there. For this project, we're still looking to expand the parking in the garage itself. Right now, there's 1,100 spots in the garage. Page 22 and 23 there show a new striping plan that's going to increase the parking in the garage from 1,100 to 1,179 spots. Page 24 takes us into basically the parking reallocation for the facility. Before the pre-construction of the garage, when the administration building was there, if you go to page 24, there were 1,100 spots in the garage itself. The county administration building monthly, this is when the county ad building was there, there was 118 personnel that utilized the lot. Government monthly first shift was a total of 382 people were in the building, in that building, in the parking in the Huntington Park garage on first shift. Non-government monthly were 52 people. Hotel, valet, self-park, there was 0. Obviously, convention center, 0. So the total monthly parkers back in 2011 was 552 monthly parkers in the facility. Transient spaces, this is for the public to be able to park in the facility. There was 548 spots available. Post-construction, we see 1,179 spots being available. Obviously, the county administration building isn't there, so those spots are all gone. Government monthly first shift is still 382, have passes into the garage. Non-government monthly, we are going to be taking them, we're not going to be permitting non-government monthly in the lot. They can park on a daily basis, but we will not be taking monthly passes or issuing monthly passes. The hotel and the convention center together is 510 spots that we're committed to providing for the garage. So that brings the total monthly parkers to 892 that'll be in the garage. And then also the transient spaces available, it will be reduced to 287. Other county facilities that are in close proximity are Courthouse Square Lot, which has 105 spaces, and the Summit Lot, which has 36. Current monthly passes for the Summit Lot are at 65. Monthly passes available are 40, and same with the Summit Lot. That's currently a public lot, so there is no current monthly passes to it, but there is dailies at 36 daily spots available. Our intent is to redistribute the parking spaces so that we take advantage of both those two other surface lots. So with that being said, our intent is to, if you look to the far, this is the same sheet from earlier there, I'm sorry. But it takes into account now that we are looking to reallocate or transfer 76 people over into both the either Courthouse Square Lot, which are surface lots, or the Summit Lot. Sorry. So if we do that, and once again, I'm on page 26 here. So the total government monthly first shift we're looking would be at 306 personnel. Non-government monthlies would be 0. Obviously, hotel, valet, those numbers which are not going to change, 510 need to be available. So for the total monthly parkers, it's going to be 816 spots being utilized. So that's transient spaces available or public parking to come and go. Those that utilize the court system is 363. In regards to the rates, which is something that I've got to bring forward to you additionally. At first, as we reviewed this, we thought we could move forward with the rate adjustment under the administration, could make move forward with that act. Unfortunately, after further review with others, that's a council action that's going to need to come forward to you also, and I'm going to be introducing, hopefully to have that on first reading for next week. But how we reviewed in selecting of these parking rates, we looked at garages in the surrounding area. On page 27 there, these are the parking garages in the area surrounding the Justice Center. And as you look through those, and some of that may be difficult to read, and unfortunately, I'm sorry. But the average rate, there's a total of 7 garages in the vicinity, but the average daily rate is $12.71, and the monthly rate is at $169. Also on surface lots in proximity to the Justice Center, most of them are along West 3rd, West 6th, and then some down around the stadium area. Those monthly rates for the surface lots are averaging $113. That's page 28. The daily rate is $7.28. So what we're going to be proposing to move forward with here is to raise the rates by almost 25%. And this, once again, this is based on our review of what's going on in the area here around the Justice Center itself. So the existing rate for daily parkers is right now at $8. We're going to be proposing that it's raised to $10. The government monthly is $85, and the proposed is going to be $105. And the reserve monthly 24/7, this is the rate that the convention center and hotel are going to be paying, will be $200. Courthouse Square Lot, the existing rate is at $8. Proposed, we're going to be eliminating that as a public parking facility, and it'll just be for county monthlies. That existing rate is $85, and we're going to leave it at $85. And the intent is to incentivize it so we can move some people out of the Huntington Park Garage and over into, be it the Courthouse Square Lot or the Summit Lot. The same is for the Summit Lot. Right now it's existing, it's $5 daily, and that's for public parkers. We are now going to convert that into a county monthly lot, and that proposed rate will be also $85. Once again, our intent is to move 76 people out of the Huntington Park Garage and reallocate them over into those other 2 lots so that we still have parking available for the transients and the public that'll be utilizing the Justice Center complex. Other transportation options. And this slide is a little bit dark. You might not be able to see it, but I made a couple extras. The Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, obviously the county employee discount pass, I believe it's $45 right now that the county subsidizes on those discount passes. Other garages and surface lots in the area. And then also the trolley service, which runs every 10 minutes and goes right past the Justice Center every day. So with that being said, on page 30, on page 32, if people are interested in utilizing this trolley service, there's additional service lots that have reduced rates further down along 13th Street. Once again, this trolley, which is free service, travels every 10 minutes in that loop. And the one trolley in particular I'm talking about is the Red Line. Every 10 minutes from 7 a.m. in the morning till 7 at night, and RTA provides that service. So if people choose to utilize that, there's cheaper rates for parking at other areas around downtown. I listed them on page 32 from $1.25 daily rate to $3.25 to $2. So there's some discount, obviously cost, or a cheaper rate for somebody who wants to park downtown. I think I should open it up to your questions right now before I go
Okay,
any
thank
further.
you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. What we want to do though here is kind of, we appreciate the preview of what's coming with the request for increases in parking rates. It was, we do.
sorry about that.
No, don't, well, we're glad to get the information. But we want to separate that out because we could have a long discussion right now about parking rates for sure. But I don't think this is, anybody can ask whatever they want, but I want to make sure, could somebody succinctly tell us what the legislation that is actually in front of us?
Okay, actually, there'll be a substitute piece of legislation that's going
Right.
to be before you
We've got to-
today.
We got to plug in the numbers, right?
That's right. And actually, do we have a copy of that? Sorry. Okay, so I'm not sure if you have the substitute in front of you right
Yes,
now.
Yes.
So the section, Joe, actually Boatright, I was hoping he would, making sure I have the right thing. I'm looking to establish, 4.5 is the number that we're looking to substitute into that.
Sure?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so rehabilitation projects of the period from 12/7/2015 through 12/2/2016 to establish an amount not to exceed $4.5 million.
12/7/15, did you say?
That's right.
So to clarify that,
Yes.
initially Board of Control approved 500 grand.
Right.
This will be a next step to the 4.5 million. Eventually, we will agree to a final GMP.
But it is 4.5.
But it is a total of 4.5,
Total of 4.5, what should be plugged into this legislation today?
4.5 million.
Okay, all right.
And so that's what,
It's 12/7/15 to 12/16? 12/2/16?
right.
You got it right there. Is it in there? Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. All right, you want to go to questions? I'm sure there will be some. We'll start down here with Councilwoman Simon and then Councilwoman Comwell's, I think, indicating to me that she has something to say.
Thank you. So, hello. We've had discussions about the fact that there's insufficient parking now to accommodate the court, the lawyers, to accommodate the public, the litigants, the people who have lost a loved one and have to go to probate and they can't park there. For the lawyers, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Metropolitan Bar Association, who are absolutely outraged that they're conducting pretrials in their car on their cell phones every time there's an event. They can't, the courts are not functioning, and I'm speaking on behalf of me as a customer of that court and what I witness with day-to-day court activity. So this is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. According to this plan, we're losing more spaces, net loss, and I will hope that this administration would not expect litigants who have, hard time navigating the court system and they're stressed out to have to go traipse to these other places or take PT. That's not really, practical solution to this. So my question is, with that premise, is this design build going to include being able to potentially go underneath the park where our monuments are, maybe as a phase two, which I think we're gonna have to plan for this as a phase two to go underneath that park to have more spaces. Does this 4.5 design build include that expansion underneath that park? And the park, yes?
I'm sorry. Actually, we are investigating that, and that's part of the charge that we're,
Okay.
with Turner Ozane. We're looking at it. We have to do a site survey of the location, and where she's talking specifically is the Huntington Park parcel where the police memorial is at. We did take a brief look at that once before, but we need to crunch down and push down on the numbers in relation to that. But there could be potential for another 300 spots in that area.
So the answer to the question is yes, so this 4.5 will include to be able to do study for
Well,
this?
to do a review. We're gonna
Review.
get some cost numbers on that, and we're gonna have to make a determination, can we finance that additional parking for this area? Does it make sense to move forward with it? That's something we're gonna bring forward to you by the time we get to the GMP process, if we're gonna include that or not. But we are reviewing it, and we hope to have some good numbers in regards to it if we can move forward with it.
Shouldn't that be part and parcel of when we look at the fees for parking? If we're gonna look at this additional project, this can't all be done incrementally, it has to be looked at, I think, together. And so if we're gonna look at fees for parking, we need to see whether that's gonna support the financing for additional spots underneath that park.
Right, well, the
Right.
fees right now that we're proposing are going to cover what we believe are the rehabilitation of the garage, and then also ongoing operations and maintenance of that garage. When we do bring that information forward, it's been since 2010 is when the rates were changed at that garage. So I think we can look at that time in regards to the rates, but I think we're gonna have to, once again, I think it's gonna cost more, or the rates are gonna go much higher if we're gonna include this as part of the project.
Well, we have to look at it, and not
Understood.
to protect us and give us a low rate, and then later on having to come back to the public and explain why. It's better we have all information up front. I mean, this council needs to realize that this garage is there to support the litigants, at least in part, to be able to access, to have their justice. And if we're not giving all the information about what it's gonna cost, then, you know, we need it all at once. We can't just come back later on and say, oh, by the way, we need to do this differently. So is this in the contract with Ozan, that they're gonna review what it's gonna cost to go underneath or expand? Tell me,
They'll be part of that discussion, okay? And we're gonna find out what it's gonna cost and then what the rate would have to be for us to do
but
that.
this 4.5 is going to include
It's
this contract?
It's part of their review to give us an
Yes.
estimated cost of the project.
Okay, great.
That's where I'm,
Okay, and then, and just before you go, and if I can.
Sure.
It just, at some point, I asked for the cost of what it would cost to demo this thing and start over again. Because what we're doing is just piecemealing this garage together, and I understand it's before the RNC that we have to guarantee. And so again, you know, we're rushing things through, we're gonna have this garage, we're rehabbing it. I'd like to look at the cost-benefit analysis of knowing what it would cost to demo the garage and rebuild it and have a nice garage that makes sense, that could accommodate everybody instead of plowing down trees on the park. So what, do you have the cost to
yeah,
demo?
actually, I do. We have an estimated cost to demolish the garage and rebuild it, which would be close to $52 million. That doesn't include escalation cost or relocation of all county workers from that, to take the garage down, and where that other parking would be, off-site county parking provisions, and then county soft coast, county contingency, a few other items. It's close to $60 million total.
And where did you get that from?
We worked with actually Turner Ozane on bringing those numbers together.
And that's documented
Yeah,
someplace? Okay, great, thanks.
so you got, keep in mind that the only access way into the convention center is off the Huntington Park garage. So all of the vehicles that service the convention center come off the backside of the Huntington Park garage. So we have to sustain that access way as you do a demolition. And then the demolition cost of the facility too. is somewhat substantial.
Okay, just to follow up before I go to Councilman Conwell, just several councilmen are very interested in the possibility of whether an expansion is feasible. And so I just want you to know, which I think you do, that there really is serious interest in this by the council as an option.
Yes, and by the time we come together with the parking rate information, I think by the, hopefully on second reading, we may be able to move forward with that. I think I should have that information available by that time.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Conwell.
Yes, through the chair, just, you touched on 76, you wanted at least 76 individuals to move over. Have you thought about how this will impact if more than 76 decide to move for that cheaper cost?
Yeah, well, it's a first come, first served basis. We're also reviewing the respective collective bargaining agreements. Some of them have information regarding parking availability. We're reaching out to a couple of the operators in the area also, Standard Parking and ABM, about possibilities of utilizing some space with them at a discount rate. Those are just in discussion phases right now. Much, in the one sheet, and unfortunately the computer's frozen up now, but it's $30 a month rate is down also at the, right in front of the Brown Stadium is available. So that's an option also. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman.
In December, I asked for the amount of money that we've sunk into Huntington.
Mike?
I didn't get that.
I will forward up to you what we put in the last few years. I do have a list.
Well, I mean from inception.
Yeah.
And we were very clear about that.
I'll get that to you. I have.
Yeah, you know, I cannot make a decision today without that information.
Right.
And you know that I've been watching this. Ms. Simon's a user. I was a user for almost 30 years. I'm looking at these pictures. I just don't know how we justify putting a nickel more into this facility. It was not Willard, was that a sister to Huntington? Do you recall?
I don't know if it was.
Because Willard came down because it's the same problems that we're having at Huntington. And a brand new Willard went up. And that really stands out when you're on the Shoreway driving by. Cleveland got it right. And I'm very critical of Cleveland, but I gotta give them credit. They saw a problem. They saw a problem, even all the millions that Cuyahoga County puts in. But they saw a problem and they fixed it. We've seen a problem I can't remember a time in my almost 30 years at Huntington, there wasn't a problem. Not a time. And now here we're gonna sink how many millions into this, do we estimate?
It's close to $20 million.
And it's 52 to replace it.
52 is just the replacement cost, but it doesn't include the other costs, soft cost associated with that, from escalation to move it along quickly, to off-site parking provisions, which would need
Cleveland
to be
Clinic-
taken into account and also.
Cleveland Clinic, where they're down there in 90th, I believe. And they park their employees for almost 2 years at Muni and bust them back and forth. Now, they didn't like it, but one thing happened. The employees got to work on time, and they just had to suck it up and deal with it. Because in the end, they're parking on campus now in beautiful facilities. I'm just looking with this with a cocked eye that we're doing it again. I hear the word acceleration. I'm not getting my numbers to offset the 52 million regardless of the soft cost. Because we have an option with that Muni lot and we're close enough to bus people if need be. I'm not unconvinced that the surface parking and the other parking available wouldn't do for a year or a year and a half or two, whatever the timeline would be. Again, I look at Willard and I just shake my head. I think we're throwing, I see a dying, if not dead patient here and a brand-new baby over at Willard. And the costs that we're gonna charge people to park in this are gonna pay for it. So I'm just wondering, other than the commitments we have with the hotel, and again, I don't blame anybody here. This goes to when they built, the decisions were made, and I don't think anybody exists with the county anymore to do the convention center, the medical mart, and then the hotel without parking. The hotel without parking's on us. And I'm still trying to figure out the meeting I missed where that was taken out. But that one's on us. The rest, to build a convention center and a medical mart in today's day and age and not include parking is just unbelievable to me. But that is what it is, and here we are struggling with those realities. So if you can get me the numbers,
I do have it, I'll forward it to you.
what's the total?
Since
And ballpark it if you have to.
It's 6.9 million.
Since that was built, we put 6.9 million into that garage?
Correct. Well, last year we put, with the emergency, but this goes back to $63,000.
When was it built?
76, 75.
Well, I want to go back to 76, because,
This is as far back as I was able to
Okay.
get for you.
all right, well, let's call it $10 million. And then we're gonna put, to me, the numbers don't add up with the end result that in 15 or 20 years, someone sitting in this chair is gonna be talking about me. That I had an opportunity to make a correct decision, and then they're gonna be dealing with this ball I just kicked down. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I'll get that for you.
Thank you. Director, I've heard this talk about the underground walkway. Is that in the other contract that?
Yeah,
In the one
actually,
that's coming
that'll be
coming
coming
next?
before you, presented to you this afternoon also. Right behind is the next item that's on item number 5B. That'll be
Okay,
discussed
fine.
during that.
If we don't know, if we're not gonna know the GMP until March, do we have confidence that we're saving money by doing the design build, and if so, what's that confidence based on, and do we have any idea of how much money?
Well, yeah, the original contract construction cost was $16.6 million. That was our estimated engineer's cost, and that's where we intend to go to. So with the design build process, we're gonna go through a value engineering back and forth with the contract, with our design build team. And 16.6 million is our intent, is to get to that number. We need to move forward with the demolition pieces of this back and forth. I'm sorry, with, starting the concrete repairs. So my intent is to stay at those numbers, those engineer estimate numbers, unless there are other items, like we talk about certain items that could be the Hilton-related items. We would expect for those items to be paid for out of the hotel budget if they are added to the project. We think because it's associated directly with the Hilton.
Wait, I'm sorry, could you just repeat that? I'm sorry.
Made the joke.
No, I got your humor, I like that, I like the joke. I'm trying to understand the statement or the joke.
So there's, the engineer's estimate for the project was at 16.8 million, 16.6, I'm sorry. Our intent is, since we came 25% over, when the bids came back, we went back and decided on this project delivery method. Our intent is to get back to that number, to get the project up and built and refurbished for that amount of money. So there will be some value engineering that's gonna take place over the next few months here. So we're gonna make a determination on what items to continue with and what we can scale back on.
I'm sorry, the question was on the 2.25% sales tax. How did that factor in?
The question, I guess, was there's certain items that we were going to include in the project that were directly related to the hotel. And if we're gonna proceed forward with some of those items specific to the garage, then I believe we should look towards the Hilton project, the hotel project, to help fund those items.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Well, I last had the floor and I had one more question. Yeah. Okay, okay, fine. Just one final question. You made a very quick statement in one sentence when you talked about the financing plan that covers the construction and the operations and the future maintenance. Could you amplify on that just a little bit?
As we were reviewing, and this should come up in the rates, the rate discussion also, but our intent is to cover the cost for the maintenance of that facility, the garage itself. We're not looking for general fund dollars to help support the reconstruction of the garage. So I think that was the point I was trying to make.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, just point of clarification, I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. The $4.5 million we are using to determine the GMP for the Huntington Garage rehabilitation, is that correct?
That's right.
So that would be above and beyond the objective of getting to back to 16.6.
No, that would include getting to the 16.6.
So that's included. And then you stated that the cost analysis to demo and rebuild would be in the neighborhood of $52 to $60 million, and that was performed by Ozan Turner. How was that financed? Was that a contract that went through Board of Control, or how did we come to determine that number if we're being requested to apply $4.5 million to determine the GMP for this rehabilitation?
They pulled together an estimate for us on that.
As a courtesy?
Well, they're providing services. We're looking at options as we move forward here, and I wanted to make sure I had an accurate option to be able to present to you for this meeting. So these are experts in the field, and they're involved in many projects throughout the country and the world, in fact. So I feel very confident. Actually, yes, we feel very confident in their numbers. So it was part of that $500,000 initial allotment for the award back under the Board of Control. So they helped us pull that number together now, this $52 million number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. So the total cost that the administration is not looking to exceed is $16.6 million, correct?
Currently, we've spent some money on design services up to this point, and we were looking to bond out for a total of $20 million for the project, to get the project completed. The estimate for construction, when we went through the initial process, was $16.6 million, and that's what I hope to spend
So
on the
this,
construction of the project.
sure, so this $4.5 million is a component. What's the total amount that we have into this project so far?
Cole, what do you have on that?
Because we're,
That's what we've paid with Jamie so far, or that's their contract.
Right.
Pays them in full.
the project of the.
So just 964.
That's what we've awarded, and then our staff time.
Yeah, so 964,000.
Is what's been spent so far?
That's right.
That's been what's awarded in contracts. We haven't spent that total amount yet because that consultant's still on board to help us with construction services as well.
Okay, so if I just round it to $1 million, so the 16.6, the 4.5, and the 1 million takes us to 22 million. And we're gonna bond 20?
The 4.5 is part of the 16.
I'm sorry, it's part of the 16, you're right, you're right. So 17.6, we're gonna bond up to 20 million is
It includes our staff time and any additional costs.
in addition to the 16.6.
So the 16.6 is what we're looking to pay Turner.
Okay, the lifetime, once these renovations are in place, what's the lifetime expectancy of this facility? Did you say 20 years?
20, 25 years.
20 to 25. The, what's the financing stack look like? So we're gonna bond out 20 million, just round numbers. And obviously, I guess we're gonna get to that when we get to the rates, is that correct?
How you're paying the debt.
Right, we're anticipating $20 million to bond out, approximately about 4% until we know for sure. So the total would probably come in about 33 million at the end of what we would have paid.
Interest in principal, but,
Right.
but we're gonna pay back, the anticipation is no general fund dollars to pay back the debt or for maintenance.
Right, the annual debt service is about 1.3 million.
And the garage itself through, I'm gonna caveat this, the garage itself through rates, parking rates, will cover the debt service and maintenance. Is there contingency for repairs and capital improvement?
That's included in it as well.
It is.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason I said there was a caveat, because for the first time I heard possibly using some of the hotel proceeds, hotel revenue from the 1/4% sales tax to possibly satisfy some of the costs and or operations maintenance of the 410 spots. Is that kind of what may be on the table?
No, I actually, the point I'm trying to make is that there's certain elements in aesthetic improvements to the garage that we think are directly related to the hotel project that we will be looking at to see if we're gonna include them in the project. I'm trying to get to the bare minimum of the structure itself, getting it so it'll survive a 20 to 25 year life, and get the mechanical systems up and running. So those additional aesthetic improvements,
So basically,
that's something I would be back to you again to ask.
so basically
to
the
discuss.
shell itself
Shell and
is
the
covered by this 20 million, but in Olympic terms, the look that you want, or the hotel would like portrayed in the garage, those aesthetics you would look towards the 1/4% sales tax to fund.
I think it's a discussion
Okay.
I think we should have.
Okay. All right, well, I look forward to the discussion on the financing repayment scheme. Thank you.
So we're talking about $20 million to refurbish this with a life expectancy of 20 years. And this original structure went 40 years, because if it was built in the 70s, like 76, and now we're at 2016, it's 40 years. My question is the construction of garages today, are the life expectancy and maintenance different than it was 40 years ago? Because I'm trying to get at a point of maybe $20 million fix to a structure that is going to be feasible, to fill the bill. Why would we want to spend 50 if we could get by with 20? So,
And that's a good point. The thing is also is that the rates, and we'll be talking about this, the intent is we have money set aside for ongoing maintenance of the facility too. And that's the thing with these garages is an ongoing cost associated with maintaining it, the joints, trying to keep water out of the facility. And as long as you have a clear plan moving forward that you're going to be spending so much money, and that's what we're factoring into this, on maintenance of that facility, that's why we believe we can get to that 20 to 25 year time. And that's all coming from, the garage fund itself. That's the intent. It's not something we're coming back to you to look for additional monies. But additional rate increases need to come forward at some other time. And it's been 5 years now since there has been a rate increase there. But we don't anticipate that at this time.
I still am not clear as far as the building construction methods today. If we rebuilt it, would they be that much more advanced than taking the money and refurbishing it? Do we know that?
I don't know. I would. I don't think that the system advances of today. I mean, once again, the thing is you have to maintain the facility. So I think you can get another 50. If you built a new facility, you'd probably get 50 years out of it.
They said about 40 is what
40. I'm sorry.
for that price. If we rebuilt new, it would get us close to 40 if we maintained, like we should also. We would still need maintenance money going forward. So you're looking at 20 years with the refurb versus the 40 years with the new build.
The example of the city of Cleveland and what they did over there, I think we did have a minimal maintenance plan on the facility, on the Huntington Park Garage. Obviously, it wasn't robust as it should have been over the years. But I think if we get back to that robust, taking care of the facility, I think we can see that 2025, maybe and expand beyond that.
And I sit here and I have these memories of the council president whom these chambers are named after, talking about parking over and over and over again when we had these initial discussions. And, you know, so it wasn't as if the questions weren't asked. Well, what is being proposed is that we would move this forward, the substitute forward for a second reading adoption under suspension of rules, I assume at the next meeting. That's what you're looking for, right?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. That helps. All right, well, I'm not sure we have a consensus here, but we'll find out. I guess. Anybody have any other questions or comments or warnings that they want to throw up? Sure.
Question. The $52 million proposal, was that based on rebuilding it exactly as it is, or with the additional spaces that we would need to accommodate everyone?
No, that was to rebuild it exactly as we're proposing the refurbish. So to tear it down and to put it back up for 1,179 spots.
It doesn't include that expansion under the park.
I just need clarification. So we're waiting for this final number, the GMP. Would that include the expansion?
We should have a number in the middle to the end of the month of January of an estimate of what that expansion would be if we included it in this current project. So we can tell you what the number is, and then we have to make a decision how we move forward. If we decided to move forward, it could be in the GMP if that's what was decided.
And the only other comment I'm going to make, if we're excluding these non-governmental pass holders and we're able to bring them back in, if we were to rebuild this, that would help to defray some of that cost as well. I mean, that would, I'm just saying.
It would be at higher rates than what the government people are paying, sure.
Right. Okay, so there's other options we can look at for financing options.
Councilman Schron, then back to Councilman Greenspan so far.
Yeah, well, just to Ms. Simon's point, if there's, I think you indicated there's roughly 300 spots potentially in that new envisioned, and if I'm using the number that I think we have been presented with in the past, it's roughly $30,000 to $40,000 per parking spot. Is that a good number?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're looking at $12 million to do this additional 300 spots, if I'm understanding the math, and would, at these rates, would they cover the debt service for the $12 million for 300 spots?
It's monthly accounting or what?
Because I only want to do it once. If you're gonna bump the rates, you might as well bump it to cover, if you're gonna add 300 spots, you might as well have it fixed at a logical number that changes
Yeah,
it once.
We need to look at that and bring it back to you for.
Okay, I mean, I'm not against or pro one way or the other, but I don't have enough information on some of that stuff. The other one is, if we were to tear it down and build anew versus refurbishing, how much of the internal infrastructure of the existing facility would be equated to having to build that new? I mean, are we looking at, of the core, the caissons and all those things, the hole drillings, are those things gonna have to all be done from scratch if you tear down and build new? Because that's the stuff that's getting wasted, it seems to me, if you rebuild new versus redoing. If you have to go back to square one on core foundational materials and things like that.
No, it doesn't include all of it. There's certain items that we would plan on retaining for part of the project itself, or if we were to build new.
So even to build new is using part of the old?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I misunderstood. Are we going to have a separate discussion before we vote on this, on the financing, on how the debt service is going to be paid back, how the rate increases impact in? What?
I think that clearly you can see members of council are concerned about, not intentionally, but being painted into a corner and whether we're doing things in the appropriate order here and it would be well enough informed.
Right, I mean, here's what I'm trying to understand is what's the total annual cost, including debt service and maintenance on the garage, and how much revenue is anticipated to be derived solely from the parking fees, and is it sufficient to cover it? I haven't been presented any of that information.
Yeah, we do have the debt service schedule. I thought we were gonna present that in committee when we talked about the rates, but we are.
But I would argue that the two are, we've got under,
Sure.
look, we're being asked, this is a major first step. We've walked down a path, unfortunately, all too often, led by the administration, not this one, previous administration, on projects that we've had to crap out on.
Right.
And I don't want to do that again.
The commitment of the hotel of 400 spots and the convention center of 110 spots is gonna bring in over like $1.2 million. And then the rest of that's gonna be covered by the rate increases. So we do, and once
But do we
again-
have that? I mean, I think it's integral to us understanding the complexity of the project, but also understanding the totality of the project.
Sure, no, and I agree.
But why don't we have it to vote on? I mean, if you're asking me to vote yes or no right now, I'm voting no because I don't have enough information. Not that I don't believe in the project, but I don't have enough information to determine, as we march down this pathway, we got stuck with the hotel with no parking because originally it was presented with parking. Members of council voted with the expectation parking was going to be included, and then it was pulled out from underneath us that it wasn't. So we got burned with that, the EOC. There are a whole bunch of projects. We can start ticking down a list where we get presented information, asked to vote on it, it's incomplete. So I can't vote on the expense unless I understand what the revenue stream to offset the.
To some extent, you were suffering from maybe some of the elevated skepticism that we walked into this room with about an hour ago, and I can hear that and feel that. What I'm suggesting, but I want some feedback, is I'd like to move this out of the committee of the whole to the full council. But if the council's not ready, next Tuesday for final passage, then they're not. So everybody's going to have to. I would suggest everybody's going to work together, but I want, to get those answers or not.
I'll support the chair's position to bring it out but with the proviso that you're warning that it doesn't necessarily mean a vote on, at full council meeting. If you want to move it out of this committee of the whole, I'll move to move it out of the committee of the whole for a second reading, with proviso that that's where we're going to be sitting next week.
I would like to just say if they would, right now I'm prepared to vote no. So if they could provide, the same kind of intense, what would the cost be for a new facility going forward?
Well, I do have that for a new facility going forward. That's that
52.
With the new spaces and all that, everything included, not just, we know we need to go bigger, so, and with the casings and everything saved, we need a good number put in front of us, one that's not gonna change, with additional spaces, how much they would go for that, because we're spending quite a bit of money on just refurbishing, like Mike Gallagher said, when we could just be buying new. So many of us feel that we should buy, build new, not buy, build.
What I would suggest is that you work very closely with our office over the next several days and we'll work closely with you to try to get questions to you and try to get answers to us and see how far we get. Then you'll need to come in next Tuesday and tell us how the world's going to, sky's going to fall if we don't do what you ask.
Release the concrete, yeah.
Were you indicating?
I'll vote to move it out, but I don't think you're ready.
Okay.
Okay, I will withdraw my motion because I know that we have to first get the substitute on the floor first. So I would move that the substitute as presented be adopted.
Second.
Okay,
All those in favor? Aye. Substitute is adopted.
thank you. Sorry about that. And then I will move, again, not being ready, but as much as to move it in conjunction with the president's request, I would move that this be moved out of committee of the whole for second reading, suspension.
Second reading adoption.
Yes, for adoption at the next council meeting, again, with all the provisos that you've already heard.
You've got it's not a mystery here. You haven't sold it's not you. The council's not sold.
Understood.
And so let's work hard to answer people's questions by next Tuesday, or we may need to take some more time.
Understood.
All I have is a motion on the floor.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Before we vote on the motion, right?
Was there a second?
I'm willing to support the president's process to move this along, and I'll second the motion.
All right, motion has been seconded, first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Tough stuff. What happens when you
can leave it, Jeff's coming on.
We're not what paid happened.
I'm walking on a tight line or something. I don't know where to go anyway. Yeah, I guess that's what we do. Sorry, a little. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Resolution number 2015-0275, a resolution authorizing an amendment to the design-build agreement with Turner Ozanne BAA, a joint venture, establishing a guaranteed maximum price in the amount not to exceed $238,600,233 for design-build services for the Convention Center Hotel project and the underground enclosure from Huntington Park Garage to the hotel, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
All right. Hi.
Good afternoon. Let me make sure I have my, okay. I'm going to, and I know that you're very late in the day, so I'll move through this as quickly as I can. You can slow me down for. Is this better? Sorry about that. I should know this by now. I know it's late in the day, and I'm going to move quickly through some of this. Obviously, you will slow me down where you need to. This primarily deals with an amendment to the Turner contract that I have talked about on many occasions, maybe the last 3 times I've told you this was coming, and I'm going to detail it. I do want to make 2 comments, and I don't, because we are going to get back into parking a little bit because of the connector, the underground connector to the parking garage, but I do want to make 2 statements going back to the beginning of the hotel project, because there were 2 statements that aren't quite accurate. When we first looked at the project, before we even started design, yes, there was a desire to have parking under the building. That's true. But early on in the design phase and long before this council approved of the project, we recognized and knew, because of the foundation systems, et cetera, first of all, the only parking that we were ever going to have beneath the building, because of the footprint, was around 200 spaces, a little more than 200 spaces. So even if we had put the 200 spaces in, we still, or the county still would have faced the project of what to do with the Huntington Park garage. It was still an issue. You still would have had to face this issue. So it's not the hotel that created the issue. And even if we'd put 200 spaces underneath the hotel, 200 spaces didn't solve that issue. The other thing I'm going to point out, that just for your recollection, as we got into the project, we started to look at, we had hoped to avoid deep caissons. Early in the design, we found out we had to go with deep caissons. It precluded the ability to do that parking. Even if we had, it would have been $12 million. And by the time you did everything else, the exit, the entranceway, that was not the solution. So parking under the hotel was never really the solution. And that was known before this council passed the project. So I just want to get that timing right.
And Jeff, you know, we remember, those of us who were here, and that's most of us, we remember that very well, because it was more than once we had that discussion.
Yes.
But the questions from the former council president weren't about questioning that. The questions were about, well, what are we going to do?
I agree, and it would have been, I will just say this, had the decision been made, because the decision of what to do with the Huntington Park garage is different from the hotel. A good question might have been if at that point in time the decision was made to build that new, so it was done by the time the hotel was done, and you could have done maybe what happened at Willard Park, although there were issues there also, but needless to say, we are where we are. So I just wanted to go back to the beginning of the hotel history, because it is separate. Okay, with that in mind, I want to go into this presentation. And here's what I'm going to very quickly just go through the status, because to understand what we're asking for here, I just want to get back to the status, a little bit of the construction status, the budget status, just a minute or 2 on inclusion. But I want to point out that we want to come back to do at a future council meeting to get much more fully into inclusion, not just to talk about what's happened on the project, but to talk about the future of construction in Cuyahoga County. I think that's a topic we want to get into, to really get into that a little bit. Then we'll get into amendment number 3, which includes the accumulation of routine change orders, which I've been talking about, and I'll remind you about that, and then talk about the connector to the Huntington Park garage. That's the quick agenda here. So first of all, I think you've seen this now several times.
You may have to, if anybody.
I'll rush through it.
I'm wrong, but you may have to skip some of the slide presentation.
I will. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Just look at the screen, I won't talk. Pictures, 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 pictures. This does get a little relevant because it gets into some of the changes. This picture is now of what's going on in the lobbyway. There you see the, underneath that, the round area, that's the reception area, that's the lobby bar on top. Monumental stairs now in the front leading up to that area, which is being built now. We are equipping the kitchen and the restaurant. That's the banquet kitchen on the top left, the restaurant being built out on the right, called the Burnham, by the way. You see here the junior ballroom. Notice that acoustical ceiling going in. That's one of the topics here to talk about quickly. Here is the main ballroom. You can see the status of construction in the main ballroom. Some of the millwork on the left there, and the ceilings once again on top. That, by the way, is the commencement of the swimming pool on the 6th floor. And eventually those panels come down, so that's all visible. You'll be able to swim and look out the edge and look out into downtown Cleveland. typical guest room headboard walls. We have artwork in all the guest rooms, and there's Cleveland scenes that will be at the headboard in every guest room. If you haven't been down there to see it, all the artwork is going into the guest rooms right now, which is really fabulous. Up on level 32, the Sky Bar, where I will be on June 1, by the way. I can't wait because I need a drink. The level 32 Sky Bar, that's another view of it. That's actually the main part of the bar, which is being built out right now. So some quick numbers. Our construction is now 81% complete. The buyout, the GMP buyout, is 100% complete. That's why we have the confidence in the numbers we're talking about now, because it's bought out. The overall development project is 71% complete because we're still working on FF&E and putting pieces and parts while we complete the last 20% of construction. The furniture, fixtures, and equipment buyout is about 65% complete. Art, 50% bought out. And so the last pieces are the OS&E, which is the owner supply and equipment that we're just starting on. That's dishes and soap and bedroom covers, whatever. That's just starting. Then finally, our IT systems are now just being bought out. So that really gives you a status of the project in terms of the buyout. I will just say very quickly, there have been 1,866 workers that have performed work on the project, about 850,000 man hours. And there's only been one injury. I told you about that before, an engineer who tripped, not even a construction worker. Very safe job, very effective job. We've previewed the inclusion program before, the 11-point program. I'm not going to go through that now. I'm just telling you the most recent numbers. And as you can see, we're tracking terrifically well. SBE, 35% versus 30%. MBE, 16.5% versus 15%. FBE, more than double. And then on workforce participation, you can see that we are equal or over all of our goals in terms of county residency, Cleveland residency, low-income workforce, minority workforce, female. All of these numbers are verified independently. There's an independently that comes in. We have verification on all these numbers. All of the FBE, MBE, SBE, those are all verified by city and county entities that look at the entities to make sure they're qualified. So this is all verified numbers, and it's what we're achieving. We're very proud of. Here's a number you haven't seen before. I think the question came up about apprenticeship. This is a very good but quiet success story. There have been 77 new apprentices working on this project. More than was anticipated. 22% of the new apprentices are minority. That's like 17 minority apprentices, which is what we were actually trying to target in agreements, but we have it voluntarily. I have to commend the Cleveland Building Trades and the Turner Ozanne organization for ensuring that we are getting these new apprentices. Also, Access to Education, the JV team and their partners have funded over 30 pre-apprentice scholarships at Tri-C, or they're in the process of funding, have funded or will fund 30 pre-apprentice scholarships. We have 2 full-time interns from the schools. So this process of getting people into the workforce, they're to be commended. It's working very, very well. And these are better numbers than on other comparable projects. Just in terms of dates, that just shows you our schedule. We completed our exterior wall was completed on 10/20. Our only last 2 dates we care about are getting the build-out complete and then an opening for business. And so far, everything's been completed on time. We're doing a terrific job. Budget status. Now, this is something that I need you to look at to recall. I've shown this to you on multiple occasions. This has not changed until today. I'm going to change it. This shows you on the expenditure side. It shows you the original design, the GMP, and now these next components, FF&E, art, utility cost, permits, those are our budgets. And then we had these contingencies that I've shown you from day one. The owner contingency of 9.2 and the design contingency of 4. That took us up to the 276 number that you heard about repeatedly. We've had from day one. Then we said we had contingency below the line, which is that additional $34 million to take us to the development budget of 310. Now, the only thing I want to show you that's changed here, and I'm going to show you these numbers, on this graphic, what has occurred, where you see the FF&E at 27.8, That FF&E, we've actually had buyout savings in kitchen and laundry equipment. So the FF&E number is $2.6 million less, which goes down to owner contingency. So the bottom line on this number, it's still 276, but there's been a modification. We have a little less spend on the FF&E because we've already had buyout savings, and we have a little more. Of course, when you save money, it drops down to your contingency. Same numbers. These numbers haven't changed. And by the way, and then ultimately for the whole project budget, as we open up, we have our opening budget, which we've presented before, and this gets to our total project budget, and it has our, Councilman Greenspan, we've been through this several times before, but you have what we've shown from day one, which is our uses and our sources, and that has not changed from day one. That has been the same graphic I've shown you from the beginning of the project. Now we get into amendment number 3. So, and let me go back. I want to point out one thing. That green arrow, what I've told you from day one, is that when we started the project, there are certain things that we held back. We said there's certain elements of the project that we don't know until we are certain that we don't have to use our contingency on other dollars. There's things we want in the project. They'd be useful. They're revenue generators. But until we're sure we can afford them, we're not going to release them. Things that we want, you build to what you must have, and then other things you hold back until you're sure you can afford them and they make sense. There's also been some elements where we said we're going to study them. We had the original pricing. Is there a way to do it better? Is there a way to do it more effectively? And we said those numbers we're holding back as the owner. That is in the owner's contingency, the 11.8 and the 4. And we've said we will put them back into the project only if and when we can afford them. And my comment to you was, at the end of the day, we expect to spend the owner's contingency and the additional design contingency. We do not expect to spend all of the additional owner contingency. In other words, that 34, that was our true unforeseen condition project contingency. And our statement today is the same. The only thing that is new and different, which is where that $34 million now goes to, part of it, about 10, now goes to the connector. So that is what's changed, but everything else is exactly what we have said before. So what we have been doing systematically throughout the project is we have been going through the process of taking contingency items and releasing them. So the last time you saw the project with amendments to Turner's contract is the 217. Amendment number 1, that was no dollars, that formalized the GMP. Amendment number 2 was that hiring Osborne for the connector. That's the only actual amendment to their agreement. What we are now doing is amendment number 3. Amendment number 3 does two things. It takes everything we've done to date from the contingency that we have transferred over to changes, actual changes, and it formalizes it. This is no additional authorization from you. The GMP, the total project cost stays the same. We're just transferring now formally from contingency to the GMP, because we're getting to the point where eventually Turner's contract is going to need that money. So far, we haven't had to give them more money, but eventually we will. So of that $15 million that we anticipated transferring, we're now about to transfer 11.2, because we've gone through formally what all that is, and we'll talk through that. And then there's the allowance of the $9.8 million, which is the allowance that we have agreed to as the cost of the underground connector, which comes from below the line. So to go through this in detail, to say it another way, we have the base budget contingency of the 11.8. That was the original contingency, increased by what we gave back on that I just showed you from the FF&E. We had the $4 million design contingency plus the additional owner contingency. So the total contingency available for the project was $50 million. What we're going to do today is we're going to bring us up to present date on contingency use, which is 11.2. We're going to ask you now to put aside for the connector allowance, which we have to start on, the 9.8. And that is the total expenditure then on contingency use through the present date. We anticipate that by the time we are done with the project, there'll be about another $4.7 million use of contingency for everything from here to the end of the job. And so far, we've tracked this exactly. Our tracking has been precise on this. So we think at the end of the day, our contingency use will be about 20.59 of that 50 million. Well, that's all the contingencies of the $50 million. So we believe at the end of the day, we will be returning about $24 million in contingency back from that 310 budget to the county. We have additional opportunities. We may save some additional, we may get some additional return of contractor contingency. There's some older owner holds and unused allowances that may come back. We may still have even some more FF&E savings. So that is the overall picture of where we stand. It's a very good picture. It's an on-time, under budget type of picture, but it completely tracks what we've been telling you at every meeting from day one. And the reason is pretty simple. We're not spending money on anything that we can't afford. Every time we make a decision, we make the decision within budget to get to some of the concerns that some of you raised about what happens at the outset of some projects. Now, there is a list. You have two lists, and this is this 11.9 million. And the two lists you have, there's a very detailed listing that you have that I think is an attachment to amendment number 3. We've also given you the same listing, which is by the size of the item. There's no expectation that you're going to go through item by item by item, but let me tell you the process that we've gone through with these items, because we have gone through, we go through item by item, we fight on every item, we examine every item, we engineer every item, and then at a point in time when we're ready, we go to Public Works. So we meet with your staff, we get their sign off on every item. So everything we've talked about, we've walked through, we've worked through, we've spent countless hours on. We have then gone and met with your staff, and they've walked through. So this has all been reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. What I'm going to do here is I am going to take some of the bigger items. We have limited time, and I can do as much of this as you want, but I'll take by picture a few of these items and just explain a few of them so you get the feel for some of the larger items. And by the way, I should also tell you, there are both increases and there's deductions. There's areas where we've saved money. One of the things that PMC we're proud of is that we looked through the original guest exhaust system, and Ellis Katz came through with the methodology that he proposed on our behalf to actually come up with a better method of exhaust. And went through code officials and others and saved $597,000 in coming up with a more efficient guest exhaust system. So there's adds and there's deducts. So here's an example, and just to show you how this works. So if you look at the list, the first thing on the list you see in blue, operable walls, $583. So what this was is as we went through, we were modifying and figuring out how to do some systems better where we have the meeting rooms and where we have the ballrooms. And you may recall the story we told you of we figured out a way that we could actually double up the use of the meeting rooms. What we could do is we could have operable walls that open the meeting rooms to the north so that that's a pre-function area. When we use the ballroom, you could come in, and some of you did the tour, you can have that whole huge pre-function area, use the ballroom, or we could close it up with walls that actually close up, movable partitions, and when we close them up, they are separate conference rooms, but even better yet, they're glass. So if we want to, you close them up and the light still comes through. Now, we had different options at the time that we entered into the GMP, and we held this back as an owner so that we could look at what is the most cost-effective and the best way to get the solution. After looking at different options, this was the one we chose. It's a great option. So this is an area where we then say, okay, you are released to do this. We can afford it. This is an example of something that we went through a very diligent exercise and it greatly enhanced the hotel. We've already understand from Hilton it's a revenue generator because people are sold on using the hotel because of this feature. Similarly, the cornice steel and facade articulation. The original building, if you take a look at this, this was the plain side of the building. Look up at the cornice. You can see there's some articulation there. You can see how the curtain wall works. This was plainer. We had different options here. We spent some money to enhance the building, not as much as we might have, but also not as little. We picked a very sensible approach with some of the money that we had. Another example, the junior ballroom acoustic ceiling. One thing that we did do here after listening to some consultants and hearing from about other convention centers, we understood that especially when these rooms divide up, we needed to really maximize sound attenuation. So we did enhance the ceilings with money that we had available to do this to make sure that we have a more positive sound attenuation in the ceilings. We held money back for this purpose, determined what the right amount was, and then went through with the solution. And that's the main ballroom acoustic ceiling there. Another example of the same thing. One of the things that we determined, and this is really going to be wonderful, on the porch where the restaurant is, so you see those trellises. We went through Hilton. We designed this restaurant with Hilton. You're going to hear more about the restaurant and what a great restaurant it's going to be. We wanted to enhance revenue generation, so we talked about having an outdoor terrace to eat. We needed to enhance that space. The decision that we made was by enhancing it. We have these the trellis that you see there, the granite bases. There will be tables there for eating out, and that's one of the things that was determined to do. Some site reconciliation. I can give you other examples. But basically, at the end of the day, what we have done, and your staff knows this, we've gone step by step by step by step by step and released dollars for those things that are within the scope of what we need to do, always within budget. This is the technical amendment that just transfers it because we've gotten to the point in the time where Turner has done the work, Turner Ozanne has done the work, and we have to now increase the contract to pay for it, all within our contingency. The underground connector design, and every member of council I've talked to has always talked about the need to have the underground connector. Now, I understand your issue is you want to make sure it connects to a parking structure that is a great parking structure and maybe the proper size, and that's a conversation. But let's talk about the connector because we have to incorporate the connector now, and we also, at least start it now, and we also have to be able to tell guests in the future who may not be very happy in the first few months that are walking over the ground in the winter that we are working on a connector so they know in the future that connector will be there. That's important for future meetings, by the way. So what this first slide is, this is just we've been working very, very hard to get these costs where we need them to be. This is a very difficult project. It's a difficult project because of all the utilities underneath Lakeside. There are manholes there that are much deeper than they probably needed to be, but they're there nonetheless. From a schedule point of view, it's just a difficult undertaking to do this, but it's important to do. So here you have what we are currently working on, and we're developing the costs. This is our estimate, but we have a capped allowance. We're going to do this project within this, what we call a capped allowance. It can go down, it shouldn't go up unless we have an unforeseen condition, which we have a contingency for. Just a little bit of detail of what we're talking about here, and this may be a little hard to see, but right now from this overhead, you can look down and you can see the drive that goes down into the Huntington Park Garage. If you look to the right, that yellow channel with the red dots is where this underground connector is going to go. It's going to start down by the elevator on that lower level. It's going to go underground, and it connects in front. There's a lobby, underground lobby in front of the hotel. And as you get into that lobby, if you go to the east, you're now in the main concourse of the convention center. So you go right to the convention center. And if you go to the west, you're right at the base of an escalator that takes you up a half a floor into the atrium. So you're right there at the hotel. This is the existing condition, and the last thing I want to do is show you more existing conditions anywhere near the Huntington Park Garage, but this is the existing condition of what that ramp looks like right now. By the way, on the picture on the right, you see the ramp, you see there's that like walkway that goes down into the garage. Focus on that a little bit, because when you look at this, what you are now seeing on the right-hand side, well, on the left-hand side, you see the existing condition. So you see, and that's a break. So you see it right at the, where you go into the garage, and then on the left-hand side, or the bottom side, it's where it gets up to the street. Right now, what you see is you see the existing lane on the left-hand side, then you see that walkway, and then you see up on the surface the trees. On the right-hand side, what you're going to see is what this is going to be like. You're going to have the lane that goes down. The walkway down will be narrow, because what then happens is that first green area on the right-hand side, that is the green space on top of the tunnel, and then to the right are the trees. So actually, when we end up doing this, if you compare to the left to the right, we're actually increasing the green space above ground on the mall, because there'll be green space on top of the underground enclosure. This is a graphic that basically shows you kind of what this tunnel is like from a walking perspective. You're going from right to left, from the garage into the hotel, or into the area beneath the hotel, and you can see how it kind of goes down where the drive is, goes under the street. It's an even. It's not abrupt anywhere. It's a gentle walk. This study kind of gives this a different perspective, where you're kind of looking at, there's the drive that goes down. You see the wall with the tunnel on the other side of the wall underground. That just gives you an idea of what this is like. One thing we're going to do, and we already have a letter agreement with Michael Hayden. Michael Hayden is very famous for how he takes mundane spaces and through lighting does art. And we are looking into making this space an attractive space, and so the guest experience gets good as quickly as possible. When you're walking in a tunnel, you want nice light, you want a nice guest experience. These are representative. None of these is the final or the idea, but the idea is that we are using this approach in order to light that so it's very attractive, effective space. And this just gives you some of the ideas that we're working with Michael Hayden right now. So mindful of your time, that's the presentation. So the action, just to get back into the precise action we're looking for, what the amendment does is it does two things. It basically takes the existing change orders that we've been telling you about from day one, but now we're basically at the point to say we need to do the formal transfer from contingency to the GMP, and we're asking, and that is part of the change, and the other part of the change is the capped allowance to proceed with the connector. So that's what we're asking for here today.
Thank you. Questions by the council? Councilwoman Conwell.
Just wanted to ask through the chair, about the tunnel. So if we vote on it today and decide to do the connector, will that interfere with the opening on June 1st?
No, as a matter of fact, that's one of the difficult things we have to do. We have to work around everything. So we cannot, so one of the things we talked about, you may recall at one time, we actually talked about doing a tunnel boring machine. Well, we can't really do that because of the problem is we can't have a hole. We can't have an unsightly construction site in front of the hotel. So one of the things that we have to do in order to accomplish this is we have to get as much work as we can before June. It won't be done. But then it's got to be covered, and it can't be impactful for the RNC. We have to have it as though we don't exist, and then when the RNC is done, we will continue. But even while we're doing the construction, we have to have minimal impact. Once the hotel opens, whether the RNC is there or not, we cannot have anything that interferes with the operation of the hotel, or for that matter, that interferes with operation of the garage to the extent that it's not otherwise interfered with. So it's a difficult process, and it's going to take us. And I will tell you that this thing will not be ready. This will be ready in the second season. This is not going to be ready for the RNC. It never was going to be ready for the RNC, and it's not going to be ready immediately. And we're going to have to do a workaround. The hotel, we were already talking with the hotel about how we maybe do some enhanced valet and do some things in that first season, because this will not be ready at the outset of the garage.
Will that obstruct the street in any way, the top of the street?
There will be some obstruction, but it'll never be completely closed or anything like that, but there will be some areas where there'll be some construction at the street level, because which will reduce the lane. That's part of the expense of doing this, because you can't take out the street. You got to do a piece at a time. And that's something that's already built. It's baked into the plan. Keep in mind, for us to have gone to the city and to get it permitted, to get it through planning, all that has to be accounted for, and we have.
Thank you.
Councilman Milk.
Mr. President, Mr. Applebaum, when you gave us that chart showing that you're hoping to return $24,112,000, does this plan assume that all of the money in the contractor's contingency and the design contingency will be used up so that only the owner's contingency would be partially unused?
It assumes that, but I will also tell you that we think that is a conservative assumption. We could do better. Just like in the example is when we did the FF&E buyout, the money that we saved on kitchen equipment and on laundry equipment, we hadn't counted on that. We bought very well. So it is possible that we could generate other savings, but the one thing that I do not want to do, and I've never done with this council, is overpromised. And so I'm not telling you that we're going to do that. It's possible, but we're using a conservative assumption here.
And what's the expected completion time on the garage and on the walkway?
Well, I'm instructed to speak on the walkway here today. So I'll speak on the walkway. I can tell you a little bit on the garage. I believe that right now, because keep in mind on the walkway, even after the walkway is done and open, there is work the following spring. There's landscaping that has to be done. So unless I am incorrect right now, I believe the date that we are using, and look at me, the date that we are now using as the drop dead date on the walkway is May of the a year from now in May 17. But that is the work on top. So we're going to be finishing that underground during that winter season. So it'll be May the following year by the time we have finally completed. We're trying to move that up, but that's the conservative date. And on the garage, I can tell you that the substantial completion date in the contract, the last I looked is December of 16. And that is this still the date that we are using, December 16, to complete the work in the Huntington Park garage.
So it sounds like with a little bit of luck, the landscaping won't all be done, but the tunnel might be operationally open for the winter season for 2017 to 18 winter.
Oh, absolutely absolutely.
17,
it'll be
18
open,
winter.
yeah. We were trying to see if there was any possible way to get it open for 16. That's not going to happen, but for 17, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, we think we'll be done early in that year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, you're getting off easy because the day is long. Anyway, thank you very much. I'd like to move that to recommend Resolution 2015-0275 to the full council for second reading adoption under suspension of rules. Could I have a first and a second? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman.
can I go back and ask a question?
Sure.
Does this walkway, depending on how council votes for the garage, either rebuilding, is there a difference? Do we have the walkway regardless?
The answer is as long as there is a Huntington Park garage, and as long as that Huntington Park garage services the hotel, the answer is we need both. So there's not a difference, but the projects have to be coordinated. I will tell you that when we're doing the walkway, it connects into the elevator shaft, they do have to be coordinated. So it is my hope that on a round-the-clock basis, you now get everything you need, because I think you can get the information you need on the Huntington Park garage. It is my hope that you vote this part out, and that everything else that you need to do in the Huntington Park Garage, you get what you need, because it's really critical. I will say this to you. I understand every concern and every issue you have. I can also tell you there's criticality to getting the Huntington Park Garage ready to go, because the one thing you cannot do is you cannot open the hotel in June without parking. You can't have the RNC without some parking in that Huntington Park Garage. So that is there's just not an option on that. And so hopefully you'll get the answers you need, but the answer is you would do this anyway.
Well, I guess then that begs the question of, if we decide that we want to reconstruct, we would wait until after the Republican National Convention to start it. Then that would put this behind if because all these pieces.
I would suggest the following. I would suggest, number one, you have to have, for the guest experience, you have to have some portions of that Huntington Park Garage that create a positive guest experience. And what was going to happen initially was that some portion of the Huntington Park Garage, some of this renovation would be done in time for the RNC, a floor, 2 floors. Now, I don't want to get, this does not sound like me, I don't want to get out over my skis. I think that there are some options that one could consider whether we're talking about what to do on the west side. You know, there have been projects which have been done where part of it's renovated, you do something else new. There are things to be done. One thing that respectfully you cannot do, you cannot simply demolish the garage and have no parking there. This is not like the Willard Park Garage where you could actually make all the parking go away and ask city employees to go to a lot, which, by the way, was not without controversy, just so you'll know. And I will also tell you that project was not without problems, including a $12 million lawsuit and huge losses on that project. That was not a great project for other reasons. But what you can't, I'm getting this. Well, what you can't do is you can't get rid of the garage. There always has to be a garage there. So the question you then have is, how can we renovate it? Can we renovate part of it? Can we start building part of it new? Can we create sections and think eventually the west side's new and you get that? You know, there's different things that may be thought about. But I will tell you that one thing you're not going to get away from is renovating that garage in part and getting it ready in part for these events, because it's got to be ready for the hotel.
Well, I think that was important. I wish everybody was here to hear that.
I understand. Everybody's been here a long time, and sometimes they have things planned and don't expect to be here as long, and I personally didn't expect to be here as long either. Councilman Jones indicated to me he wanted to say something now. Councilwoman Simon, we are going to vote on this as soon as we finish asking questions. We've already had it moved and seconded, just saying. And so Councilman Jones and Councilwoman Simon.
So Jeff, I hear everything that you've said, but we know we have to consider a vote next week. And I don't like the idea of feeling, let's say, railroaded, so to speak, into having to decide.
Understood.
If I took the perspective that if we're building a 5-star hotel, valet parking is an option. In fact, I'm thinking it's preferred. You know, you're not just parking in front of a hotel and walking into your room. You want a valet. That's part of the experience. So if you're valeting, you can use the multiple parking that's all around in the general area of this hotel, not just Huntington, you know, but there are options. As you said, there are options. So if there are options, you know, we need to know what they are, and we need to have full knowledge so that we can consider what we do next week.
I appreciate that. By the way, and I'll say two things. First of all, there are options. One interesting thing about the Midwest is if you are in San Francisco and if you are maybe in Boston or New York, there's a mentality where you could actually do 100% valet parking. That mentality does not exist in the Midwest. There's a certain amount of people who will, even if valet is less expensive than drive-up parking, there's a certain amount of people who will still insist on drive-up parking. They want to control their car, they want to control their keys. And so you have to have a certain amount of drive-up parking. And by the way, we do anticipate, our anticipation is 50-50 on valet versus drive-up, just so you'll know right now. That is the Hunting, the Hilton, who knows more about this than we do, says it's going to be 50-50. Keep in mind, some of these spaces are also for, there's events. People are going to come to the ballroom. If someone's going to have a wedding or they're going to have something at the Hilton, and they're not all going to be valet people. So I will tell you that you're right, and we can depend on some valet, but you still need some attached drive-up parking.
Councilwoman Simon.
We had to have some. Sorry. Why didn't we have some from the beginning?
We always anticipated 50-50 from day one. Our only issue was that there was a recognition that we could not, this was from the beginning, the plan was, from the very beginning, when we knew that we couldn't have any parking, we could only, from the beginning, even at the beginning, when we had 200 spaces under the building, that was still not enough spaces. We always knew that we were going to use a garage that was as close as possible. The idea of using the Huntington Park garage for this project was there from the beginning. The only question was how many spaces. This is not new. Now, I will tell you that, solving the problem on the Huntington Park garage, I'm not going to get into that. This issue is not new. This issue has been known from day one.
Councilwoman Simon.
So, thank you. It would be very helpful to me to hear about these options in the next week, about what options are available to incrementally, if we're going to demo, if we could do that incrementally, what our other options are, because I'm not hearing that. And I'd like to know everything. So that would be helpful if you could give us your creative ideas. And
well, I will channel it back.
Okay.
But you'll
Channel it
get,
back.
Yeah, you'll get the ideas that the team, including Turner Ozan, would have.
I think we need to wait, and I don't see why we can't just put some money into some boutique-looking parking spaces for the 50% who don't want to use valet, and then hold off on making these major decisions in this short period. I don't see why we can't just make this fake-looking nice thing and then make major decisions.
I think the answer is because you still need about 500 spaces, and because you have structural and other issues in that garage. I'll just say that. Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are losing members, so we're going to kind of quickly move. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none. And is there any public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, well, I guess I did have, the only miscellaneous is really, and we need to communicate this to our members that aren't here through the staff, that we really need to try to get questions to our staff, as soon as possible, and try to, put our shoulder to the wheel. I want to, commend the members of council for putting so much time into all of this afternoon. It's certainly much more than I think anybody ever anticipated when this charter was written 6 years ago. And today is a day that makes that pretty clear. This isn't even one of our regular days. Okay. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.